devices. Check it out now. The game of paintball is a diverse activity that means many different things to many different people. But to a team originating out of Canada, Edmonton Impact, it means one thing above all others: a quest to be the absolute best. Their adventure started back in 2003 in the rookie division.
Split with Team Peg Factory. We are from Edmonton, Alberta. We're Canadians, right there.
We do a lot of training back here in Edmonton.
Then after over a decade and a half of hard work and perseverance, their Canadian core, surrounded by a select group of elite imported talent, came to define dominance as they railed off 14 wins all over the world during a 4-year run. They hadn't just climbed the mountain, they had become the mountain.
This is it. So big congratulations to Edmonton Impact.
Look your Impact! Way to go!
It says a lot. You know, I think about the boys and 10 years old playing, and you never dreamed of coming this far and how we've come.
But after their success with the win in Vegas last year, they hit a slump with disappointing finish after frustrating performance. But changes were made and new players were brought in. Now re-energized and reformed, Impact's mission remains the same as it always has been: crush everyone on the way to the #1 spot and become the best team ever to pick up a paintball gun. Join us on the Impact Series as we dive into all the on and off field drama that drives this legendary squad and their journey to get back to the top. Brought to you only by GoSports.com. I'm Matty Marshall, and happy, I think it's day 26 quarantine for me. Not sure where you guys are listening from, but we're just hiding away here in our caves and trying to stay away and stay healthy. I got Ronnie Dizon, the people's champ from the D-side battle we had on FanWagon, also a former MVP. Definitely check out his Dizon docs, great storyteller, a big proponent and an all-star player here in the sport of paintball. We're going to talk about a few things today. Going to talk about his team, Houston Heat. Going to talk about how they did at the first event in Vegas. Talk about the future for that squad moving forward after definitely a disappointing finish for them, considering that they did just come off that first place victory in World Cup. It's looks like we lost Ronnie for a second here. Hopefully we can get him back. So we're going to be talking to Ronnie about the my FanWagon, the utility. Here he goes. The utility attackers. That's the battle going down right now. I think we're in the top 8. Yeah, into the top 8. So going to get his thoughts on that. But without any further ado, Ronnie, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. Just staying busy during this 2020 NXL Quarantine Open, just trying to do as much as we can during this time to stay productive without actually being around people.
Yeah, right. And again, apologies if the connection does cut out. We're doing our best here. I actually cornered the Cox Cable guy here in San Diego and was like, "Yo, dude, can I talk to you real quick? What's the deal? I run a speed test every single day, multiple times a day, and I'm not pinging what it was before. That's not what I need to win here," and explain the situation. And he looked at me like, "Yo, dude, you realize that everyone in this entire block and the whole city's at home right now, and they're all either watching Netflix or they're on the internet working. I don't know what to tell you." And I was like, "Okay, dude, at least you're shooting me straight, man. I appreciate that."
I was the same way, dude. One minute my upload and download was like 500, and next day it was like 2. So it was like, what's going on here? But yeah, I guess, with everything going on, everyone's home on the internet. So
yeah, my wife and I have been tag teaming when we were allowed to use the bandwidth too, because she works for the San Diego Housing Commission, and obviously with all the stuff going on with rent and homeless people and landlords wondering and all this changing policy, and so she's trying to figure out their whole organization. So now she's at home too, away from her office. She's also pregnant. So it's like there's just levels upon levels of the craziness that everybody's dealing with right now.
There's levels to this, but anyway, baby. There's definitely levels.
There are levels to this, as Kendrick Lamar once educated us on. But
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
so we got lots to talk about. Also want to let everyone know at home, definitely check out Ronnie's docs. I also want to talk about what you got coming up here, and what's going to be releasing. What are you working on? Looks like we lost you again. Again, please stick with us here. He'll probably come right back on. But yeah, so Ronnie has been working on these behind the scene looks and on the field looks from a pro player's perspective, and it's really insightful. It's really entertaining. And I just love that Ronnie's carrying the torch for the storytellers here. So definitely want to support what Ronnie's got going on with the Dizon docs. So talk to me, Ronnie, a little bit about what you got on the docket right now, what's dropping, what you just dropped, what you're working on. I know you're doing some streaming too, video games, etc. But give it to me. What do you got going on?
Well, essentially, I'm just catching up to the Vegas vlogs. I try to document every event that we play, and obviously the last one we played was Vegas, and just trying to prolong it so we have some footage and content. I call it Dontent, but just more or less along the whole quarantine that we have. So I have one more vlog that's dropping. It's going to drop Friday. It's going to be when we played Revo, and we'll go over that later. But it's going to be Sunday of the event, and essentially just trying to spread what we do as professional paintball players. Maybe give kids something to aspire to, or be able to at least enjoy it while we're at home. And then as far as like off the field stuff, I've actually been streaming Call of Duty mobile, not like the console or PC game. I'm playing mobile. So I've actually been playing a lot with Ryan Brand, and Cena's jumped on with me a little bit too. So we've been dipping into that on YouTube and Twitch. So yeah, follow me on there. It's Rondon Dizon YT or Rondon Dizon on Twitch.
Hell yeah. Yeah, we're all just in this new paradigm for a little bit. The world will get back to normal. I've had that conversation with a lot of people. Obviously we're, fearful of everything that's happening right now. I got a mother undergoing cancer treatment and a pregnant wife. So I definitely am super concerned about what's happening with the world. But as an avid student of history, I actually stopped playing video games. I think I'm going to go buy an Xbox now, just because for the next month or so we're going to be here, and I'm going to have to double down again. But I love playing video games, dude, and I can get sucked into video games super hard. But I also love reading books too, so I kind of had to pick one or the other. But I'm thinking about getting an Xbox again to dive in, just because we have all this time. But
dude,
this too will pass.
Everybody's doing the same thing. I know Spica actually just bought one, and a bunch of other people are diving in. So
yeah. But this too will pass, man. This is not going to be the thing that takes civilization down. That would be like a mutated bird flu with an RO factor, meaning like how many sick people infect other people, of 20, with a mortality rate of like 40 to 60%. Like, this is not that disease. It's going to suck, and this is just going to be tough for the next, and we're going to have to deal with it. But things will get back to normal. We will be playing paintball again before we know it, even though every day does feel like an eon here. When you're locked in your house, it's like been raining in San Diego for the past couple of days. So like we can't even go out for a walk. And now everyone's wearing face masks. I'm going for the, I'm going for the extra look here from Mad Max and the Thunderdome. I'm just wondering when I can start wearing my shoulder pads. You know what I'm saying? But this is,
oh, there you go. You're locked in.
Here. Yeah.
You're definitely locked in. I like that.
But speaking of stuff, but also people have been doing some altruistic behavior, what's good for everybody, and trying to give back. And you've been working with the blood drive with Ryan, and talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so myself, Ryan, Nick Sloviak, I know Marcel is getting involved, and then a bunch of other scenario paintball players like Wolf, all got kind of brought together by this man, Lars Hensley, aka Danger Man. That's what he goes by on YouTube. Huge paintball advocate, loves the sport, and he wants to just give back. But essentially, the biggest event in paintball history is going to be happening from the 20th to the 25th. And what that is as paintballers, we have the support of the American Red Cross and America Blood Centers to be able to go and donate blood. And what's happening right now is America's suffering, and the blood drive and the blood centers are suffering due to everything going on. So if you can get to a blood center from the 20th to the 25th, and donate a pint of blood, we're trying to shoot for 100,000 pints of blood. It's going to have a huge impact. So if you go to paintball-cares.com, by heading to that site, you'll be able to get all the information of blood centers in your area, what you could do to help. Is it safe to be out during this time and going to a blood center during this pandemic? And yeah, just, it's something that us as paintballs as a whole, not just speedball and airball and, this tournament scene, but paintball as a whole can come together and put an impact and a dent into the world, So just want to put that out there.
And what was that website again?
It's paintball cares.com.
That's awesome.
So if you
and then I also saw that I've seen Marcelo went up to HK's warehouse yesterday, but they're also giving away I think it's if you purchase a mask, and you've seen a lot of this, like Powerhouse is helping, I think General Motors producing parts for, because I hit up Carl from Powerhouse. He was like, hey, how you holding up there in San Diego? I'm like, again, pregnant wife, mom with cancer, a little worried about stuff, but hey, got to keep a positive attitude about stuff, because being negative about it isn't going to fix anything. And that's just the truth. But they had to change their stuff too, and they're producing parts for ventilators now. It's just an HK. If you buy an HK mask, they're also donating masks to their local hospitals, and I think Marcelo picked up some that come down here. I also have a lot of family that are nurses. I have another cousin who's pregnant, and she's an emergency nurse. And then one of my best friends, he's a firefighter. You guys might remember crazy Nick Black, Red, aka Red, big tall ginger guy, used to be screaming from the sidelines for San Diego Dynasty.
Yeah.
His fiance is also an emergency center nurse, and she's pregnant as well too. So there's just a lot of people that are out there on the front lines, and we want to support them any way we possibly can. So let's move on, man. I know this is obviously a time that we haven't really seen in this generation. I haven't really seen this for 100 years. So definitely we want to support those things, and we definitely wanted to talk about that. But we also, we got to take our mind off the craziness too. So let's dive into some paintball talk, man, and just kind of get all that out of for a little bit and kind of just enjoy some talking about the thing that we love. And I also like that you brought up that, paintball is not just speedball, man. It's not just airball. It's not just the NXL. I mean, that's the tip of the spear. I always joke. It's like some people enjoy drinking Bud Light, but some people like drinking whiskey. It's like, to me, when you have the best of the best playing against each other 5-on-5, like that's like sipping, pick your metaphor, man, whatever you want. But, you're distilling that thing down. You're literally taking and making it incredibly potent. And it creates these, what I would call like a magnified moment. It's a moment that's incredibly pure from like a flow standpoint. We're also going to be releasing a new series. I think just talking to Kyle Spica today, he's probably going to be, and Ronnie, I'd love to have you on here too, but it's going to be called Go Sports Tactics, where we're going to be kind of diving into that flow state moment where, taking top players like yourself, like Spica. I think the first episode is going to be Spica talking about their game in the quarterfinals when they took down AC Dallas, and just taking it kind of, not point for point. It's not a whole breakdown of the entire game. We'll do some of those too, but just kind of cherry picking specific moments, specific moves that were the difference maker. But that's kind of the cool first thing I want to throw at you, because you're one of those guys, man, and how you transcended. Like, what's the difference between you and all these D-side, or all these not other D-side guys, but divisional players, guys that want to be in your shoes? And I say this all the time. You did not come out of your mom's womb an amazing paintball player. You had to work for it. Yes, there was an innate level of talent. Somehow you had the drive and desire to be that person, to make that your reality, but you had to work your ass off and go through a lot of hardship in order to become the player that you are. So that's kind of the first thing I wanted to throw your way. I mean, and congratulations. You just, obviously, everybody loves you because you just won the People's Championship for the D-side attackers. So congratulations on that. I mean, that's awesome. But you're a former MVP award winner. You earned the right back on Houston Heat. You have quite the interesting story, but a lot of that happened through your willpower and your ability to absorb information and persevere and prevail in those magnified moments, in those crucial moments when you have to read the variables and make the right decision, and then utilize all the training and all that mental fortitude to, exert your will upon your opponent. So that's kind of the first thing I wanted to throw at you, was talk to me about that, man. I mean, I feel like one of the coolest things about your blog, that when I check them out, is those on-field moments, or when you're talking about those things. I also love, as somebody who's a sucker for a good story, and Heat's got one of the craziest paintball stories out there. So I love the behind the scenes stuff. So keep doing your magic. But I also love those potent moments that you kind of described in your blog. So talk to me about that. We'll get into the last event, but I just generally talk about your journey. We've had you on the show before. We talked about this. But I just want to hand you the mic again and let you talk about that journey and what you really felt like. What was the magic, man? Like, what worked for you? How did you get to this position? You could even maybe talk about your story a little bit again. in case people forgot. But yeah, man, give it to me.
I mean, the big thing that I want to attribute to it is like, 2012, got on Houston Heat, played a few years with them. They released me for, personal or whatever. There's a lot of reasons that go into it behind the scenes. And I went to Aftershock, thrived there for a little bit, and then I got the call back to go back on Heat. Essentially like a comeback story. Just wanted to work my ass off and be, on the starting line. And more or less with Heat, the talent on level on the team is so like widespread, like you said, like that's why we're so scary. There's just, everyone is a great player in their own regard, which is very difficult to get playtime sometimes, and when you can only play 5 guys and you have 10 guys to pick from, the puzzle is just harder to put together, right? And it's not like any piece is wrong in any scenario, right? So the biggest thing that, and I teach this in my clinics too, is paintball knowledge is like a big filing cabinet, right? And I said this in a podcast yesterday, and I'm going to keep reiterating it, and I'm going to coin it because I'm going to keep this one as my own. But
yeah, repetition is message, my friend. Absolutely,
100%. The difference between a professional player and a divisional player is my filing cabinet's going to be bigger than theirs, right? I'm going to have way more scenarios and variables, and the more experience that you have, I think field experience is king when it comes to any game. So if you've been in a scenario 100 times over somebody who's been in it only 20, that 100 times is going to win most of the time, right? Because that person knows what to do. It's just, and it's the same scenarios over. I know Archie said this before. It's the same scenarios, just different field layouts over and over and over again. Unless you have a field layout that's like absurdly slow, then you're gaining more files in that cabinet. So I think by being exposed to pressure from coaches over the year, like Jason Trozen, to my teammates, to different play styles of different teams, from having to go back, I think everything just attributed to that cabinet, and it's just constantly growing, and now it's continuously growing. So I think that's one way to attribute it to whatever success I've had in these past few years, and as well as the teams I've been on.
Let's kind of dial it in and talk about that flow state real quick, because absolutely. The more instances that you have access to within your mind, and the more times that this is why I always preach to up and coming teams. And I'm not even talking about teams coming up the ranks in the divisional leagues. I'm talking about pros. If you're level right now, or any of the teams that have just come into the pro leagues, and you're not doing situational drills where you're putting guys into positions, you're not really doing everything you possibly can do to try to get high level performance out of guys consistently. Because if you're just playing points, if you go, doing drills sucks sometimes. It's not fun to beat the 2 and 4 pushing into you and you have to hold off for 45 seconds. It hurts, especially when you're doing it 20 or 30 times within the framework of a weekend. It's a lot funner to be on more fun to be on that 4. But even that, you're basically trying to recreate the pivotable moments that are going to dictate whether or not, and this is what we're going to be breaking down in those tactic shows. BKI breaks this down too. Ronnie can break this down for you in a clinic. So pay the man and have him come out to your field if you want to hyper speed your development in the game. He didn't even pay me for that. I'm just telling you that that's the truth. But it's,
I just started doing remote coaching. Shout out.
There you go, dude. Hit up Ronnie, slide into his DMs. How serious are you about getting better? But take me into that flow state, because if you read the literature on flow states, and if you look at what differentiates a high level chess player, because we're playing chess with guns. That's I've always loved saying it's a cliche for a reason, man. We are really truly playing chess with guns, or even maybe Go. If you're not unfamiliar with the game of Go, if you like chess, you'll like Go even more. It took computers a lot longer, almost 10 years, to master the game of Go as opposed to chess. That's how much more complicated the game of Go. It's an Eastern game, strategy game. That's how much more complicated the game of Go is, because extrapolating all the different variables and the potentialities within the framework of that matrix of that game is totally different. That's what paintball is. To me, it's like we're playing Go with guns. I love it. It's amazing. Yeah. That's why I love this game so much, even though my knees aren't working the way they used to, neither are my shoulders, and I'm getting, long in the tooth and gray in the beard. We were talking about how amazing your hair is. I can't dye my hair blonde anymore, even though I used to back in the day with the frosted tips. So I got to give shout out to Ronnie's frosted tips, looking pretty sharp.
You can dye your
beard. Talk
to
me about that. I can't. No, what, dude? God dyed this thing, man. Gray. You know what I'm saying?
Everybody, let's get Matty to dye his beard. Everyone.
Oh man, what color should I dye it? Like jet black or red? Just like straight red beard, the pirate.
Blonde.
Bleach blonde. Whew.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think
That's-
my DNA is slowly bleaching the brown and red out of it. I used to have like 4 different colors in my beard, and then the gray. Don't worry, Ronnie, it's gonna come for you one day, my friend. But it latches on like a virus. It started right here, and then I'm like, what the hell is this? Is that a gray hair? You pluck it out, and then
hey, man, that's wisdom right there. That's wisdom.
Yeah, yeah, right. So talk to me about this. Speaking of wisdom, talk to me about the paintball wisdom, man. I mean, you spend a lot of time in these variables. Talk to me about that flow state. What is actually going through your mind when you are in that crucial moment, that crucial point? You know, take me even back maybe to that MVP performance you had. I think it was 2 years ago. But you've been in these crucial situations before where the team's like, let's give Ronnie the ball, man. Ronnie's our guy. He's lights out right now. And that's so hard on your team. Like you said, I mean, Houston Heat, you guys are as deep as it gets. 2-time world champs now, 2 times in a row. We will slowly we definitely want to get into the conversation about what happened to you guys in Vegas, but I think this is probably a good way to kind of broach that, because if you look at what happened is that, you know, Revo has been slowly but surely really stepping up, and you're going to document this a little bit more thoroughly, like I think you said in your Dizon docs. So let's transition into that. But before we get to that transition, talk to me about that flow state. Is it truly nothing much is going through your mind? You see the move, you make it because your filing cabinet is, and your mind's like tick, tick, tick. Oh, that's the move. Bam. Then you make the move. Is it one of those situations?
I truly feel it is like that. I feel like you're not even thinking. Yep. You're thinking, right? But it's more or less like your instincts and everything has clicked. So you're not thinking about like, okay, if I get to the spot, what's my shot? You know that's you're 5 steps ahead already. So when you do the same thing over and over and you're starting to get into that flow state, you'll see the greatest in the game, you know, Michael Jordan or any players at the top of the level of our sport, you know, you'll see when they're in their flow and they know what their next moves are 5 steps before. That's when it's truly remarkable to see something amazing happen, you know. A perfect example is someone like Alexander Bridnikov. That man already has six different moves planned ahead. And I feel like he's very good at getting into his own flow state, which allows him to be the player he is. So for me personally, I feel like it's the only way to get into the flow state is already doing the homework and practice by building the filing cabinets for, you know, your side of the field or that layout. So when you get off the field, you get the feedback from your coach and you go, okay, this is what happened. You make the adjustment already in your head and you're already a step or 2 ahead of them on the other side of the field. And if it all goes, you know, the way you need it to, then you're taking your actions, you're present to the moment, and you're not even thinking. You're just boom, boom, boom. Like you said, it all clicks right away. So, and that just comes with time. I think practicing to get into that flow state comes with a lot of pressure. You know, diamonds are made under pressure. So you consider yourself,
1,000%.
if you're a top level player, you know, you're a top level player, you want to be a diamond. A diamond means you are sparkling in the light of the sport. Then you need to put yourself under pressure in practice a lot. And, you know, we've gotten the opportunity to practice amazing teams, and X Factor is obviously a consistent one that Houston Heat's been practicing. So you're talking one of the best teams to ever play the sport, and we're able to go head to head with them before events, so that those pressure situations get all brought to you when it comes to the event. So
isn't it such a let's just ponder that metaphor real quick. Like, isn't it? This is when I trip out on reality sometimes. If we could go on a tiny bit of a tangent, I just love this. It's like, let's think about what a diamond is. You take something that's carbon, right? I mean, diamonds are made of carbon. Carbon can be incredibly soft. It can be one of the softest things that exists. We're carbon-based forms, and I mean, as I get a little older, I'm getting a little bit more fleshy than I used to be back in the day. But but then you take that substance, that molecule, and you exert a shit ton of pressure. We're talking about like mountains, like a mountain, like that, like Everest itself, weighing upon, you know, a tiny fractal moment, like tiny little point. And then it's not just that, but that's what will create the substance that is a diamond, you know, being in the internal point of the earth where all those, you know, insane just amounts of pressure are exerted upon that, you know, those molecules to compress them, to get them to have their, you know, their framework line up to make them that strong. But then to get it to shine, you have to, you know, dig it out of the ground or pick it up from a riverbed, but then you have to go and you have to polish it. So now you're taking this thing that was created under a ridiculous amount of pressure to make it as hard, with the hardest substance that we know. And then you have to take that same substance, something equally as hard, to polish it in order to get it to shine. I just think that's such a beautiful metaphor for everything in life, not just paintball. And then, or if, one of my favorite shows is Forged in Fire. I live in an apartment. I unfortunately don't have the space here. I live in San Diego. It's expensive out here, and I've devoted my life to paintball. So, my bank account's not super stacked here because I've been telling stories instead of making products. But regardless, so I don't have a forge in my backyard. But one day I will, and I love Forged in Fire. And in that show, what they do is you're taking something that is rather malleable, and you have to heat it up, and they put it under a ridiculous amount of and what heat does is it sends molecules around until it gets to a point, and they put the carbon in, and the carbon, after beating on it, again, ridiculous amount of pressure, and then it will become the strongest thing we know, that one of the strongest things we know, which is steel. And then you sharpen that again by exerting a bunch of pressure on it and shaving the unessential parts off of it to create the blade. And I just think that all of those things, whether it's the diamond or the metaphor, the forge, the crucible, I just think those are life. That's life, dude. It's like this whole safe space, weak bullshit. Like, that's why I love the game of paintball. And that's why, I love that you're a prophet for the game. I think people that understand what I call it the gifts of the game. And one of those gifts is that it shaves off the bullshit away from you if you're willing to stay in the pocket and deal with the hardship. Yeah, sure, it's fun, man. Playing war is super fun. No one's dying out here. We're just shooting paintballs at each other. But the gift of the game is that pressure. And you just have to be willing to endure that. You have to be, willing to endure the shave so that it takes off all the bullshit away from your mind and away from what you have. And in order to create that sharp edge, which, depending on how big your ego is, either cuts you or it cuts your opponent, your choice. So it's just, I think that, that's why your story has been so, I think, inspiring for a lot of people coming up. And that's why I always love, sitting down and chatting with you. Before we jump in and talk a little bit about your guys' performance, again, disappointing performance for you guys, 9th place finish in Vegas. You lost to a team that's getting a lot better, Revo. You also lost a game to Impact that, was, as a fan, I was really expecting that to be a war of the Titans, because you guys are the two Titans, two of the Titans in the sport. Impact Heat, the highest paid teams, biggest payrolls, have won championships. I mean, Impact was dominating, but you guys dominate World Cup. You guys are like the aftershock of old. You blow out occasionally in tournaments, but you show up when it counts. It's amazing. It's a really cool part of your story. 2 World Cups in a row is a pretty outstanding. But before we jump into that conversation, let's talk a little bit about the Players' Choice Awards we've been doing with FanWagon. Like we're all in here in the COVID hole trying to burn time before we can get back to regular life. And we do thank you guys for your support. We're a small business too. So just, support Ronnie, support, all these different companies. And, I went to my local coffee shop today to get my wife some breakfast to support a local business, wearing my mask and trying to do my due diligence. We don't really go out of the house very much except for essentials typically. But, I think it's important to support your local businesses too. And I ask every one of the restaurants that we, either get delivered or how everyone's doing, and they're just barely keeping their head above water. So definitely wanted to send that public service announcement out there too. But let's talk about this People's Choice Awards. So you won the D-side battle, and now we're heading into the utility killers. So, and it's been tough to put these brackets together. We're going to be having some infamous players in the support players. It's a longer conversation. Callie, you can hit me up if you want. My bad. I probably should have put maybe Cody Minkowski in there. Callie, you've been gone for a year. I know, dealing with some important family stuff. But you guys were well represented in the D-side and snake side killers. So yeah, maybe I could have put Cody Minkowski into this battle, but I felt like the way that Infamous plays their games, I feel like Cody is more of a support player. But even though they will lose some, Infamous will lose some bodies. I'm bringing this up because Callie Rudolph, who I love to death, he hit me up and he's like, "This is bullshit. Infamous doesn't have utility killers, Matty. Come on, man. I'm like, I can't please everybody, man. I'm trying to do my best here."
Yeah, you can't, man. You can't. There's only so many spots on the list that you could really fill, So, well, I mean, it's not discrediting them in any way.
No, not at all. And they were well represented on the front attackers. But the thing is like, look, man, if I'm putting a utility killers, if that's what it is, utility attackers, utility killers. Yes, Cody is, I think, one of the most underrated paintball players on planet Earth. I'm a huge fan. I speak highly about them and Infamous. But if you go back to Infamous's record for the past year and a half, they haven't beat a top team in like a year and a half. I mean, it's unfortunate, but that's kind of the truth. Now, does their new roster that they just put together, is that a roster I think can contend for wins? Absolutely. Again, I'm just bringing this up because I got to speak on it. I didn't mean any disrespect to Infamous. go buy their new amazing tanks that they just put out. I think the Skeleton Air is pretty badass. But when I'm putting these lists together, I'm looking for, matchups, also working on other stuff too. So it's not like I can devote all 8 hours of my day or even longer because we're stuck in this, in the COVID hole. But anyway, it's just, it's about just creating conversation. This isn't for the Hall of Fame. This is just to create fun conversation for us here as we're burning some time in the COVID hole, while the Rona is sweeping the earth. But anyway, so let's jump in and talk a little bit about, we can talk about this in any way you want to talk about it too, Ronnie, because I love your opinion on things. But the battle that's going on right now, it's Ryan Greenspan versus Kirill Perini, two legends in the game, two leaders on their team. I think that's an interesting battle. Also, Kirill was the top killer for the Russians coming off of their second place finish. That was an amazing performance for Kirill at the last event in Vegas. He could potentially be going up against Malloy, because it's Malloy versus Archie, which could be a finals match. But just like in paintball itself, you can't. None of these are going to be easy. Period within any of these 32 at all. So there's no such thing as easy bracket in pro paintball right now, essentially because everyone's getting so good, which I definitely want to get your thoughts on a bit. And then it's Fedorov, your teammate, against J-Rab, which is that's a ridiculous. That could be a finals. Like that's what I'm saying. Like you're telling me Malloy and Archie could be a final. It's all Titans, dude. The Titans are fighting the Titans as well. It should be. And then, and then you got Marcelo and A-Rod, our MVP and Golden Barrel, the winner from the last event. And what a crazy win that the Ironman had. So before we kind of get into the conversation about Houston Heat, I wanted to talk a little bit about April Madness here. Let's start with Greenspan versus Kirill.
Okay, and then before this starts, I kind of just want to reiterate, like, this is the people's choice, right? And there are a lot of people who are upset about me winning the D-Side People's Champ because I did go up against like Colt Roberts, Hall of Famer. You got Carslid, the Cannibal. Of course, those guys are definitely great players. And if this is the people's choice, I do want to say it is about your fans and your following when it comes down to this, because that's all we really have right now when it comes to your skill level will take you far in these polls. But if you have a good engagement with the fans and the following, that's definitely going to push you past. And that's why you see, I'm not going to lie. I built a over 200 plus video series on YouTube and grown a very big fan base in that regard. But more or less people I engage with, I take the time to talk to every single person who tries to engage with me, whether it's on Instagram or YouTube. So it's giving back to the fans too when it comes to this. So with cracking into this, you'll see.
Wait, hold on. Before you jump into that, I want to co-sign on what you're saying. I want to co-sign on what you're saying because, look, man, it's like sometimes I don't want to name names, but sometimes I'll ask dudes to get interviews and they're like, oh, Matty, I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to be about it. I want my, my play on the field to speak for myself. And I'm like, look, I totally respect that. But the only people that can actually do that is if you're like Richard Sherman in the NFL. Like, that's it, dude. Other than that, like they're already generationally interesting. They've been around so long that grandparents are having their toddlers sit on their lap while they watch the NFL and they're explaining the game to them before they can actually even speak English properly. Like, we don't have that, man. Like, we're just getting to that point. So that is a luxury that other sports have. And those other sports did not start that way. In fact, if you go back and look at, say, one of the first big sports to ever break was baseball. And baseball got super popular. There's a fascinating book written by Bill Bryson, and it's called 1927 A Summer, or One Summer. And it's super fascinating. And it talks about a couple different narratives that were happening during this one specific summer. Lindbergh was flying over the Atlantic. The Yankees had arguably the best team ever to play the game. And all of these certain things were kind of coming together in the modern world at the same time. But one of the reasons that the Yankees and Babe Ruth specifically became so famous is that he was larger than life. He allowed reporters to come and hang out with him as long as they didn't talk about his mistresses, but they would talk about his, he'd eat 25 hot dogs. He'd drink 40 beers. He'd show up hungover and hit 4 home runs. He was this larger than life figure, but the reporters, because there was an explosion of radio, there was an explosion of daily newspapers, and people started to have, and media, and the unions also were starting to carve back some of the people's time away, so you didn't have to work 16 hours a day to feed your family. So people started to have spare time. We could do an hour just on that. But I totally agree with you, man. You have to. This is why I've been such a proponent of telling these damn stories, man. Nobody wakes up in the morning and gives a shit about your life until you tell them about your life. You have to invigorate somebody's mind with an entertaining story, dude. No one just goes, oh, you know, I really wonder what Houston Heat's doing today. That's not how it works, dude. That is just
no. You got to be.
That's not how the human mind works. Yes. So that's anyway. I wanted to co-sign with what you're saying. Yes, this is the People's Choice Awards because we want people to vote on this because we want people involved, man. I want people to give a shit about pro paintball, about your life, about these. I think this stuff is fascinating. But just because you think something is fascinating doesn't mean other people are going to think it's fascinating. You have to give them 100%. A reason to make them care. And that operative word is the verb in that sentence, make. And that's why I love what you're doing. And I've always been a fan of what you're doing. All right, so let's move on and talk about these. Speaking of making people care, let's make people care about these battles right here. So you got Greenspan and Kirill. Break that down for me.
Flat out, I think Greenspan's going to win. He'll win that. 100%. I don't think I mean, as a player, they're both the same position player, you know? But as far as if we're talking the poll, I think Greenspan's winning. And that's my personal opinion. But as players, Kirill is a phenomenal technical player, and he's been at the top for the entire last season. He's been on the top for seasons to come, and he's been on the top in seasons past. Ryan's the same exact way. They're very, like you said, paintball. Like we just said, paintball titans. But when it comes down to the People's Choice, Ryan's winning that one.
I just think that it's such an interesting battle. I totally agree with you. I think that Ryan's going to win that one hands down. Kirill has been a foundational member of that team for a long time. I love the updates he gives. You know, he's definitely somebody that's trying to communicate as much as he can. You know, he does awesome Facebook posts and breaks the stuff down. So, but you know, Ryan has just ingratiated himself for 20 years with his fans. Yep. And yeah, I mean, player to player, like I felt that Kirill played better at the last event than Ryan played at the last event. I think that they both had
look how many times the Russians have been, you know, there. No, it's nothing against Dynasty, but it's more or less like Kirill's been in so many finals in the past season, and Ryan has too with playing overseas in Europe too, and he's always been at the top. But like we said, if this is the People's Choice, I think Ryan's gonna take this. Not to take anything away from Kirill, I'm sure he has an amazing following, and I'm sure a lot of people love him. But I still think Ryan as a brand, as a paintball ambassador, is just going to win this one.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back, the Russians have been in the finals so many times, way more than Dynasty in the past couple of years. But you know, it's an interesting battle. You know, we could probably, we could spend a lot more time talking about those two guys and their teams. But yeah, the Russians have been in the finals 4 out of the past 5 times. That's incredibly impressive. You know, they were second World Cup. They were second at this event. They're so consistent. They've gotten so good. It's such an interesting story. One of the most legendary teams ever. And Kirill has come back through crazy injuries. He blew his Achilles tendon. Some people don't ever come back.
God.
Yeah, like that ends a lot. Most people that blow their Achilles out, you're never the same. Your career's done, and you're coaching or you're watching from the sidelines talking about. Yeah, so the fact that he came back from that and he's been better than ever is impressive. Now, also, it's like, you know, you see those memes. It's like that old guy, that drunk guy who's like, yeah, I got to give it to Greenspan, still getting it done after all these years. You know, like Ryan is still in peak condition. You know, he's posting jacked and tan pictures on Instagram. He's still in phenomenal shape, you know, pushing 40. And I love the career. I mean, I remember we were trying to pick Ryan up on the Ironman when we were world champs back in the day, when Ryan was like 16. Like, the dude has been doing it at the top level forever. It's incredibly impressive.
Dude.
But like, I agree with Ronnie. I totally agree with you. Tons of respect for both guys, but I think hands down, People's Choice, I think for sure Greenspan's going to win that one. He's going to move on. This one is a little bit more interesting.
I love watching the Threes Company that him, Spick, and Camille have going on on Instagram stories, dude. It's
Uncle
totally
Spicka,
Threes Company,
Uncle Kyle.
dude. Watching. Shout out to Kyle, the babysitter.
Yeah, Kyle. Whenever Kyle has kids, he's gonna be primed because. And I remember. And speaking of Kyle, we can even talk to Kyle maybe about this because he's gonna be. Well, we're gonna be spending. We get Kyle on a different show and talk about that because on the Tactics show, I definitely want to talk about what happened at the last event and walk us through some tactics stuff. But yeah, it is hilarious, man. I mean, they live about maybe 8 miles from where I'm at back in the beach. I was a roommate with Greenspan for I think 5.5 years. But I remember asking Kyle, I was like, yo, dude, are you going to move out when they have the baby? Or because he has a good spot there. You know, they live in an amazing place right down by the beach. The house is dope. Like, it's a really cool spot. And he's like, I don't know, maybe not. I mean, I love them, and the baby's going to be super fun. So, and then, yeah, it's totally, it's totally Three's Company
priming
for
him,
sure.
dude. Priming him for the kids, dude.
Yep, he's going to be a great dad one day. But let's move on and talk about Archie and Malloy, Alexander Burtnikoff. So Archie Montemayor, Alexander Burtnikoff. This is another one that could easily be the final. But what do you think about this one?
These are all good. All four of these are just good.
So good.
They're all juicy.
So
man.
good, yeah.
Super
juicy.
I don't know about this one, because I mean, Archie in himself is both of them. I can't even. This one I don't know. I can't tell you who's going to win this one. It could be. I could be
this one.
No, I can't.
Yeah, me neither. It's a coin flip. Straight coin flip, dude. Like, if I had to, so if I'm sitting at this one and I'm like, okay, Archie Montemayor, Alexander Burtnikoff. Forget, like, as far, okay, I'm talking about people's choice. Yeah, sure. My vote, I don't know. Like, this is I don't even know which one to vote for, because
this might
Malloy's been so good for so long. Yeah, right. Tie for sure. But somebody's going to move on. I don't know who it's going to be, because Archie is on any given day the best player out there. Malloy, and he's a Top Gun award winner from last year. He's also the Top Gun. He won an actual Top Gun for this season, not just.
Dude, you're talking about both these guys are just Top Gun, Golden Barrel, back and forth, like stat stuff in, like kill, like 5-pack getting, like you just can't. These are both the best, some of the best to ever do it. I don't know who's going to win. I'm really excited to see. It could be. Geez, I want to say it could be Archie.
I just think that I think Archie's a little bit more. I think Archie's a little more engaged with his fans, but Malloy has pulled off so many crazy moves over the years that, and he was that he was the guy run through in 9 seconds and hitting that buzzer. I mean, it's just so difficult with this one that I don't know, man. I'm with you, bro. I don't know. This one's
two of the
greatest. You can't go wrong with this one.
100%.
I feel like this is how I'm going to pick. This is how, moving on. This is how I'm going to pick this one. Okay, that guy. All right, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm just going to close my eyes and pick this one, because
Fedorov and J-Rab, we're talking again.
Same situation,
dude.
Well, okay, let's talk this one through, though. I mean, you're obviously Fedorov. He was a hero for you guys at Cup, playing injured. J-Rab has been a hero. I would have to say that J-Rab is a little bit more consistent more often than Fedorov is, but I think Fedorov's top end a little bit bigger than J-Rab's top end is when he's going off, which is crazy to say, because J-Rab's top end is, I don't know, I'm throwing that out there.
That's what I'm saying.
You can either totally disagree, you can agree. What do you think?
Yeah. Listen, I got my boy Fedorov, obviously, because that's my boy,
Of course.
But he's going against another Titan to play the game, right? Consistency wise, and I think Fedorov will agree to this, that he isn't the most consistent, right? But like you said, his ceiling is to space and back. He is what a lot of people coin, like that. It's like what Malloy is like. Oh, that guy did a Malloy. Like that guy did a Fedorov. Like it's a description of something within the sport of what we play in tournament paintball. So I mean, I think J-Rap, both of them, that's again another coin flip. I got my boy Fedorov. That's where my vote's going. Hopefully you guys all vote for him too, because that'd be nice if we sweeped. But you know what I mean? Realistically though, like I that's a hard one in regards to skill, but I'm taking Fed on that one.
Yeah, no, that is something to note. I mean, you took the first one. Chad George took the snake. I'm sorry, you took D side. Chad George took snake side. And it wouldn't shock anyone if Fedorov won utility killers. So I think that's interesting though that you talk about pulling a Malloy. Like, we named that a move because he just started watching when Malloy would just literally make a move, not even check off, even though he had checked off on it maybe a couple seconds earlier. So he knows that's a potentiality within the framework of the variables, and he'd make that move.
Right.
You just didn't see him check off on it at that moment. But Fedorov, anytime somebody runs and guns to the 50 and smokes 3 dudes, we're like, oh, that's like Fedorov. That's how Fedorov got paintball famous. We'll bring Fedorov up anytime Goldman does that, or whatever, Haber from the up-and-coming snake player from the Outlaws. Anytime somebody runs and guns into the snake, anyone that's been watching this game for as long as we have will go, oh, that looks like, and then you compare him to Fedorov, because he was basically one of the first guys to run and gun full speed into the snake, shoot a dude or two off the break while he's running at full speed into your side of the snake, and then shoot another couple guys and win the point single-handedly. 100%. And you're like, how do we stop that? We have to put guns.
He's probably one of the one of the biggest influences in my entire career. And I'm talking, I room with this guy every event, you know, and he's basically my brother. And at first, to be honest, like, the funny story, the first time I ever like really met Fedorov and like was practicing with him on Houston Heat, dude, I like bonus balled him one time. And like, here's me, this young kid who's like looking up to like, you know, his hero, and I bonus balled him. Like, I gave him like 2 or 3 extra, and then he yelled at me, and like I was like about to cry. I'm like, oh man, like I pissed him off. Like, so it was more or less like to be able to room with him and learn from him and get to know him. Like, dude, this dude is like my other half. So he truly sees the game in a different way, and sometimes his delivery is skewed in the, you know, in the way he, you know, because he's not natively English, so the way he delivers may be harsh because it's so direct, but he's saying something, he's trying to say something. And it's after learning how to communicate with him, I slowly start to understand like what his message is. And so, you know, one of the greatest to ever do it, for sure.
For sure. And he's going up against Justin Rabikov, who is arguably also one of the best players on planet Earth. Dude, his track record is insane. He played for the Russians. I love the story about J-Rab when he had to go over into the dungeon in Moscow and do one-on-ones against the only American over there at the time for 3 months in a row. And this is before Netflix. And he had 2 DVDs, Ferngully and American Psycho. And those are the only 2 movies that he could watch. And that, if you know anything about J-Rab, like that's a perfect example of J-Rab's personality. Ferngully.
He's Christian Bale.
If you've never seen Fern. Yeah. And then, so he's like the dinosaur in Ferngully or Christian Bale when he's on the field. So, and just literally chopping people up with a chainsaw, which is his paintball gun. And I just think that when I heard that story, I'm like, oh my God, dude, that's something I couldn't even have written that to be a more appropriate, just dissection of a person's personality who I've known since he was a kid. J-Rab has been a habitual line stepper since he was a child. When I was working at Dye back in the day, and I was like 20 years old, and basically if you owned a 2-piece Dye barrel between the years of 1998 and about 2001, I made that barrel for you. You're welcome. Even though, well, you spent $120 on it, but regardless, I put it together for you. And I tried really my hardest to make sure those things were perfect. So J-Rab at the time, because Steve Rabikov was working at Dye as a salesman, so I'm working my way through college, getting my degree from San Diego State, playing pro paintball with the Ironman, and working, putting sign. I did like 3 different jobs, but that was one of my jobs. And J-Rab would come in, you know, to the warehouse and act up, and we'd be like, hey, Steve, will you keep your goddamn kid out of the dangerous warehouse? Because
what would he do?
You know,
would he grab the barrel and go, hey, Matty, this one's not lined enough, you need to redo it or something?
No, he would just run. He was a kid. I think he was like 9 or 10. So he's just running around, just running a racket in the warehouse. The warehouse and the machine shop is a dangerous place, man. Like, that's not a place that we would tell him, like, hey, Justin, get the hell out. What are you doing, man? Get out of there. You're supposed to stay over here. And he was always just a fun kid. So he didn't want to do what we told him to do. He'd be looking at us like, yeah, I'm not going to do what you're going to tell me to do. And then, so one time me and Davey Williamson had enough. So we basically grabbed him. We hogtied him with duct tape. I'm seriously, like, we put his hands together and duct taped them, and then duct taped his feet together, and then duct taped those together, and then picked him up like a suitcase and brought him into Rab's desk and put him duct taped together. And I'll give Brandon Rabikov props, because the whole time that me and Davey were taping up J-Rab, Brandon was beating on us, and Brandon was even younger. He's like, stop hurting my brother. And we're like, we're not hurting him. We're actually looking out for him, because we don't want him to get hurt in the machine shop. And then we just took him hogtied, and we're like, hey, Rab, will you stop the kid from being in the dangerous spot? But anyway, but my point, and then but J-Rab would also come out to practice, and he would play against the Ironman when he was like 10 years old, dude. So it's not surprising to me at all that, and he came on Excessive when he first got made on pro. Like, I've seen this dude come up since he was a child, and he had a big personality, and and I wouldn't say a big ego, because he was always kind of quiet and soft spoken in a lot of ways. So I wouldn't say he had a big ego, but he had a chip on his shoulder. You know, he had that Rabikov swagger, and he's always had that. I love Justin, and I got to give a lot of respect to him and his career he's had. So when we're talking about Fedorov versus J-Rab, I mean, dude, I don't even know who to pick in this one either. Let's move on to the next one, because I do obviously want to talk about heat. This is a great conversation, man. Thank you so much for this. This one's going to go long for sure. But hey, what else do we have to do? Because we're all stuck inside in quarantine here. Let's talk about another crazy one to pick. 2 former teammates. You got Marcelo Margot and you got Alex Rodriguez, our MVP award winner and Top Gun from the last event, with the Ironman with their historic win. So maybe you could speak on that historic win a little bit. First win in 10 years, 10 and a half years, almost 11.
Oh, man.
And then,
dude, it was,
which is crazy.
Yeah, dude. I
talk about the win first. Talk about the win.
A classic matchup, Ironman versus the Russians. I mean, we're talking since Oliver was on the team, that was a class, like 2006, 7, 8 era was when like the Russian Legion Ironman kind of rivalry reignited. And now, I mean, we practiced the Ironman the first weekend of the event, and when the layout came out, and instantly off the bat, I mean, we all talked about it. The Ironmen are going to be a force this year, 100%, because of just from this year to last year after practicing them, they were a better team. I mean, you got a lot of guys on that team who what's the whole the saying about Chiefs and Indians? Too many Chiefs, not enough Indians. Well, they got a few Chiefs and they got all Indians that just want to be there to play and win. And you're talking Nick, getting cut from X Factor, going to that team, reigniting another flame in him, which Nick is a phenomenal player when that flame is lit, clearly. And then you have A-Rod, who balled out of his mind that event. And then LJ Parrish, the best event of his life, Thomas Kim and Corey Hall, one of the best events I've ever seen him play too. Like, dude, you had all cylinders firing and nobody, it was like the dark horse, right? It was like, okay, like, yeah, they're going to make it to this round, but then that team's going to knock them out. Like that's what I feel like people were thinking. But after practicing them that first weekend, like they clicking, dude. They were clicking. So just to watch that was really, really fun. I mean, I was in the VIP for most of it and I was just hyped, dude. Like Corey Hall was screaming at the crowd and I was screaming, dude. It was hype, bro. But yeah, after watching A-Rod in that Russian game, dude, some of the best paintball that, anyone's ever seen played, just from a player of his caliber and his position. He played that second on the Dorito side, but dude, instantly he would launch and do his center presence, which is what he's known for, right? So he was in a position where he could go down the Doritos and be an attacker. He could dip into that center and then do his specialties up the center. And he read every single move and every prediction that anyone threw at him on Sunday, So that was really awesome to watch. Now he's going up against Marcelo, who undoubtedly, I think top 4 in the league for being an engaging presence for paintball and a phenomenal player in his own. I mean, that man's gone over to Australia and won events like it's no one's business. He's won events in Europe recently with Ryan and
South America too.
What was it? Yeah, South America. He's an ambassador of the sport as Ryan is. He's basically a clone of Ryan, when it comes to this.
Yeah.
And he's won world championships. He's done everything in the sport you possibly could have, right? So you're talking another Titan against another Titan. I think the fans for A-Rod are going to push them to this level, but I think Marcelo's got a really good engagement with his fans and huge social media presence. So I think I think it's going to push him through on this round, but we'll see. I mean, so after A-Rod's performance, he could have gained, the following of, I don't know. That's a hard one.
I think it's a hard one right now because of the performance that A-Rod just had. He's had a lot of amazing performances. He did spend a while, though. He was not on the webcast. He was playing in the semi-pro division, which he did to get paid. And hey, man, you got to make a living in this world. Someone's going to pay you to do something you love.
Aftermath,
why not take that? Yeah, but for a while, he was kind of out of the public eye and down in the semi-pro division, not on the webcast, while Marcelo was, again, we're talking about People's Choice Awards here, so this has to be part of the conversation. While Marcelo's traveling around the world, giving everybody daily, hourly updates as to what he's doing and, ingratiating himself to fans everywhere, all over the world. So again, that's why he's such an amazing ambassador. But he is coming up against A-Rod, who just had, like you said, one of the better performances that we've ever seen out of a middle attacker. And even, I was sitting there and I was like, man, A-Rod is I guess you could say he's a utility attacker, but when I first did the list of 32, I didn't have A-Rod on there because he is so dedicated to being a middle attacker. And I could make 16 guys out of our 20 teams that just are middle attackers, just like we're going to have the support players. So this is what we were kind of debating from like a creative perspective, right? Because he does occasionally find himself on the snake side as the 2 when he has to filter over, same with the D side, but typically he's that bully up the center. So they play slightly different positions, but based on the way, I mean, if I'm talking about a utility attacker and somebody that is such a huge killer, I couldn't keep him off that list. And especially with the performance that he just had and the way that guys were dying in certain situations and how he has found his way into those different attacking spots because he's always thinking attack. You know, we get a different look at it. So he had to go through Ryan Moorhead, a teammate of yours. Let's look at who A-Rod just came through, right? And also with Marcelo Margot as well, too. But I mean, he had to get through Ryan Moorhead, who's the MVP from World Cup, a year and a half ago, or a little less than a year, a little over a year ago. But Ryan Moorhead, if we talk about a utility attacker, Ryan Moorhead is one of the best ever. He can play D side, he can play snake side, he can play in the middle. That guy is the definition of a utility attacker. So he beats Ryan Moorhead.
Really, really good. Yep.
Yeah, one of the best players on Heat on any given day. Then he goes against Matt Jackson, who won a Golden Barrel last year. He's the best player in AC Dallas if you look at the stats. And so then he, carved his way through that on the Players' Choice Awards, and now he goes through Marcelo. Marcelo had to go through Chad Bougier. He was a legend in the game. His own teammate in Tyler Harmon, who Dynasty was pissed I didn't put him as in the D side up against you guys. But I felt like we've seen Tyler play entire tournaments on the snake side, essentially, with a few points here or there. Because when they needed a guy on the snake side, they put Tyler on the snake side a lot, and they put Tyler in the center as well, too. So when I was looking at I felt like Blake was more there, that's Dynasty's D side attacker. Some teams have more than one, Heat, obviously, with you and Nico. Sure, Nico's been a couple other spots. Yeah, they'll throw you different places too, but you guys are D side attackers. Blake's a D side attacker. I didn't feel Tyler was just a D side attacker, and that's why I saved him for this specific one, because this was going to be a bigger field. We had 32 guys instead of 16. And I also always want, we got to throw some of these guys in everybody. Yeah, no, for sure. I know, but I try. I'm trying.
For sure.
You got to at least try. You can't, but you got to at least try. But yeah, so with that one, this is another tough one to call. I'm not exactly sure. Again, I don't want to keep you forever, so we got to move on because we could literally spend 4 hours just breaking this bracket down. And this has been a great conversation, but I got to talk to you about Houston Heat's performance in Vegas. Again, a little bit of a frustrating performance for you guys because you guys ended up taking 9th. Now that's it's definitely one of the worst finishes. I mean, look, you guys made Sunday, but if we go back to, I got a lot of notes in front of me, so I want to go back. Because, I mean, last year, you guys won the World Cup again. But if we go through every single finish that you guys had, it was 2nd, 4th, 5th, 3rd, 1st. If we go to the year before that, you had a 2nd, a 4th, a 5th, a 3rd, and a 1st. So in 2 years, this is the lowest that you guys have ever finished, which definitely hurts you guys for the series title again. Now that we don't really know. Obviously, the next event is canceled. I really do truly feel that the late June event will be played. I don't want to bring. We talked about the virus at the open of the show. I don't. Again, this is trying to get our heads out of that virus craziness.
Sure.
But I do think that there's a really good chance that event could be played, because it is at the end of June. If you look at what the experts are saying, I mean, we're still at kind of the beginning of April. We have all of May. That's actually, if the incubation period of the virus is 14 days at the very maximum, then that's 4 incubation periods of the virus that we have before that event actually happens. So I think that we're in some way, shape, or form, and there's 2 different conversations. There's the Pro League, and then there's the NXL actually happening in and of itself, right? So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it actually goes down. But to jump back into this actual performance for you guys here at the event, things were looking outstanding for you guys. And let's just kind of, walk through game by game. We don't have to go super into the woods, but things started out really well for you guys. You beat the brakes off of Uprising, a team that looked outstanding at World Cup, beating some big squads. AC Dallas, they beat Impact. But then you guys really beat them up bad. I mean, Uprising didn't look great. They finished actually down at 19th place. It's one of the worst performances that Uprising's had the past couple of years. So let's just, again, we're going game by game, but talk to me about that Uprising match.
I mean, the Uprising game, I just think we read the field better than they did, and reacted faster than they did. I mean, more or less, I think Uprising did well at World Cup, and that layout played specific to what they were doing, and they were very dialed and focused. And I think for this event, when we played them, at least in my opinion, they just didn't adjust fast enough. I don't think they. Okay, so I've had a talk with David Barga. That was a year ago, and when they had their Vegas performance.
Yeah, third place. Oh, lost you for a second. I'm sure Ronnie will come back on. But yeah, Aftermath had an outstanding performance a year ago in Vegas as they did take third place. But then after that, it was a huge struggle for Aftermath. They weren't able to win one game essentially the rest of the year. In fact, until this event, Aftermath was able to put a win on the board as they beat Infamous 5-4. Hopefully Ronnie will jump back in here and we can get his thoughts on the rest of this. But yeah, Aftermath was able to put a win up 5-4 against Infamous, even though they lost their other 3 games. But they didn't look terrible. I mean, it wasn't that horrible of a look for Aftermath in this one. But yeah, and then what the last couple things that I wanted to get out of Ronnie, hopefully he can jump back in here. I'm just gonna text him real quick. Oh, hold on a second. Well, it doesn't look like we're actually going to be able to get Ronnie back on, which means that's unfortunate. But yeah, unfortunately, we can't get Ronnie back on. But it was a good conversation. Yeah, he just not able to get it done, man. They lost to Revo in the wild card round. It was a 1-point match, 5-4 was that game. But you know, again, we do have some time to burn here in this COVID hole that we're all in. We do have some more content coming at you guys. Hard at work on team profiles, all 20 team profiles we're going to see before the start of this next event to get all those stories. And they are pretty captivating stories because the league is getting so deep. I mean, essentially from the 11th place team down to the 20th place team, 19th, everyone went 1-3. From AC Diesel down to Uprising, from 11th to 19th, all those teams were 1-3. The only team that lost every single game, fortunately, was the Outlaws. But those were some really close matches. Go check out the Impact Series episode number 1. That's right out there right now. Episode number 2 dropping a little bit more thorough breakdown of Vegas and their story and what happened there for Edmonton Impact. Just finished the voiceover for that. And also we have our tactics show. The first episode is going to be, I believe next week, we're going to be dropping that. We're working on it right now. It's going to be with Kyle Spica. And make sure you get your votes in for the April Madness. And is it going to be Greenspan, Kirill? Is it going to be Archie or Malloy, Fedorov, J-Rab, Marcelo, A-Rod? I don't know. After that, we're going to have the support players. We may have middle killers as well, too. We will see. And then we're going to go to the winners from all of the different brackets. They're going to be thrown in a bracket to see who wins the overall players or people's choice. So hope you guys are staying safe and healthy out there. Matty Marshall, Go Sports Live. See you guys next week.
The game of paintball is a diverse activity that means many different things to many different people. But to a team originating out of Canada, Edmonton Impact, it means one thing above all others: a quest to be the absolute best. Their adventure started back in 2003 in the rookie division.
Split with Team Peg Factory. We are from Edmonton, Alberta. We're Canadians, right there.
We do a lot of training back here in Edmonton.
Then after over a decade and a half of hard work and perseverance, their Canadian core, surrounded by a select group of elite imported talent, came to define dominance as they railed off 14 wins all over the world during a 4-year run. They hadn't just climbed the mountain, they had become the mountain.
That is it. So big congratulations to Edmonton Impact.
Look your Impact! Way to go!
It says a lot. You know, I think about the boys and 10 years old playing, and you never dreamed of coming this far and how we've come.
But after their success with the win in Vegas last year, they hit a slump with disappointing finish after frustrating performance. But changes were made and new players were brought in. Now re-energized and reformed, Impact's mission remains the same as it always has been: crush everyone on the way to the #1 spot, and become the best team ever to pick up a paintball gun. Join us on the Impact Series as we dive into all the on and off field drama that drives this legendary squad and their journey to get back to the top. Brought to you only by GoSports.com.